The emergency alarm screamed through the underground corridors as Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her back against the cold concrete wall, listening to the shuffling footsteps getting closer. 3 days ago, she was just a geologist studying thermal activity in Yellowstone. Now she was trapped 200 feet below the park in a classified government bunker, watching her colleagues turn into something inhuman. The bite mark on her arm throbbed with each heartbeat, and she knew she had maybe hours before she became one of them. But what terrified her most wasn't the infection spreading through her veins. It was the realization that this outbreak wasn't an accident. Someone had deliberately released this horror beneath America's most beloved national park, and she was the only one left who knew the truth. Don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment below telling us what horror topic you'd like us to explore next. Dr. Sarah Chen wiped the sweat from her forehead as she adjusted the seismic equipment one more time. The readings made no sense. For 3 weeks, her team had been monitoring unusual underground vibrations beneath Yellowstone's Norris Geyser Basin, but these weren't natural geological patterns. The tremors were too regular, too structured, almost like machinery. "Sarah, you need to see this," called out Marcus Rivera, her research partner of 5 years. He was crouched beside a thermal imaging scanner, his face pale in the afternoon sunlight. "There's a massive void directly beneath us, and it's warm, much warmer than it should be at that depth." Sarah hurried over, her boots crunching on the dried volcanic soil. The thermal readout showed a rectangular cavity approximately 200 feet below ground, stretching nearly half a mile in each direction. But what caught her attention wasn't the size, it was the heat signature coming from within. "That's not natural," whispered Dr. James Kowalski, the team's geophysicist. He'd been quiet all morning, but now his eyes were wide with excitement. "Look at these temperature ratings. There's active heating down there. Electrical systems, maybe even life support." The implications hit Sarah like a punch to the gut. In 30 years of geological research, she'd never seen anything like this. They were standing above what appeared to be a massive underground facility, hidden beneath one of America's most famous national parks. But who built it? And why here? "We need to report this," Sarah said, reaching for her satellite phone. But Marcus grabbed her wrist. "Wait," he said urgently. "Think about what you're saying. If there's a classified facility under Yellowstone, and we're the first civilians to find it, what do you think happens to us, to our research?" Sarah looked around at her team, Marcus with his worried expression, James practically vibrating with scientific curiosity, and their intern Jenny Walsh, barely out of graduate school, staring at the readings with wonder. They'd stumbled onto something extraordinary, something that could change everything they thought they knew about Yellowstone. "One day," she said finally. "We give ourselves 1 day to investigate before we report it." Finding the entrance took 6 hours of methodical searching. Hidden beneath a natural rock formation near a dormant geyser, they discovered a concealed access hatch that looked like it hadn't been opened in months. The metal was corroded around the edges, and strange brownish stains marked the surrounding stone. "This is it," James said, running his hands over the sophisticated locking mechanism. "Military grade, but the electronic locks are dead. Power's been cut." Jenny peered over his shoulder, her young face bright with adventure. "Can we get in?" Marcus shot Sarah a concerned look. As the team leader, this decision was hers, and they all knew it. Every instinct told her to walk away, to call the authorities, and let them handle whatever lay beneath their feet. But the scientist in her, the part that had driven her to spend decades studying the mysteries of the earth, couldn't resist. "James, can you override it?" 20 minutes later, the hatch groaned open, releasing a rush of stale, metallic air that made them all step back. Sarah shined her flashlight into the darkness, revealing a steep metal staircase descending into blackness. Emergency lighting strips lined the walls, but they were dark and lifeless. "The air quality seems okay," Marcus reported, checking his portable atmosphere monitor. "Oxygen levels are normal, no dangerous gases detected." They descended single file, their footsteps echoing eerily in the confined space. The staircase went down much further than Sarah had expected, at least 20 stories into the earth. The walls were reinforced concrete, institutional and cold, with numbered levels marked at regular intervals. Level B15, Jenny read aloud as they passed another marker. How deep does this go? When they finally reached the bottom, Sarah's flashlight revealed a long corridor stretching in both directions. The walls were lined with doors, each marked with official-looking placards. Research Lab A7, Containment Unit 12, Biosafety Level 4. What kind of research were they doing down here? Marcus whispered. Sarah didn't answer, but the knot in her stomach was growing tighter. Whatever this facility was, it wasn't just some government storage depot. The first laboratory they entered told a story of hasty evacuation. Computer monitors sat dark and lifeless, their screens cracked. Papers were scattered across workbenches, and several chairs were overturned as if people had left in a hurry. But it was the smell that made Sarah's skin crawl, a sweet, cloying odor that reminded her of roadkill left too long in the sun. "Look at this," James called from across the room. He was standing beside a large whiteboard covered in complex diagrams and formulas. At the top, someone had written in red marker, "Project Lazarus, Stage 3, complete." Jenny was examining a computer terminal that still had power. "I can access some of the files," she said excitedly. "The system's still running on backup power. Sarah, you need to see this." The files that flickered across the screen made Sarah's blood run cold. Research protocols for something called viral reanimation studies. Test subjects listed only by numbers. Video files with timestamps from just 2 weeks ago. They were experimenting on people, Marcus said quietly, reading over Jenny's shoulder. Human subjects. Testing some kind of biological agent. Sarah clicked on one of the video files, and the screen filled with grainy security camera footage. A sterile white room, medical equipment, and a figure strapped to an examination table. As they watched, a man in a hazmat suit injected something into the subject's arm. At first, nothing happened. Then the subject began to convulse violently. The restraints held, but Sarah could see the person's skin beginning to change color, becoming pale and mottled. The man's eyes opened, but they weren't human eyes anymore. They were clouded, lifeless, yet somehow aware. "Jesus Christ," James breathed. The video continued for another minute before cutting to black. In that final moment, Sarah saw the subject break free from the restraints with impossible strength, lunging at the camera with inhuman speed. "We need to leave," Marcus said firmly. "Right now." But as they turned toward the door, they heard something that made them all freeze. Footsteps. Slow, dragging footsteps coming down the corridor outside. And they were getting closer. The footsteps stopped directly outside the laboratory door. Sarah held her breath, motioning frantically for her team to move behind the overturned lab benches. Through the small window in the door, she could see a shadow moving slowly past. Then she saw it. What had once been a human being, still wearing a tattered lab coat with a name tag that read, Dr. Peterson. His skin was gray and peeling, hanging in loose strips from his face. But his eyes, those clouded, vacant eyes from the video, tracked back and forth with predatory awareness. The thing that had been Dr. Peterson pressed its face against the window, and Sarah had to clamp her hand over Jenny's mouth to muffle her scream. Black veins spiderwebbed across the creature's neck, pulsing with some dark fluid. Its fingernails had grown into claw-like talons that scraped against the reinforced glass. For 30 agonizing seconds, it stared directly at their hiding spot. Then, with a wet, gurgling sound that might have once been human speech, it moved on. "What the hell was that thing?" Jenny whispered, tears streaming down her face. Sarah's mind raced through everything she'd read in the files. Project Lazarus, viral reanimation. The researchers here had been trying to bring the dead back to life, but they'd created something else entirely. Something hungry and hostile, and impossibly strong. "We need to find another way out," Marcus said, his voice shaking. "That staircase we came down. If there are more of those things, we'll be trapped." James was already at another computer terminal, frantically searching through building schematics. But as they prepared to leave the lab, Sarah noticed something that made her heart sink. On Jenny's arm, barely visible beneath her sleeve, were 3 parallel scratches. Fresh scratches that definitely hadn't been there when they'd entered the bunker. "Jenny," Sarah said carefully, "when did you get hurt?" Jenny looked down at her arm in confusion. I don't remember. It doesn't even hurt." The corridor outside was a nightmare landscape of destruction. Emergency lights flickered sporadically, casting eerie shadows on walls stained with dark, dried blood. Broken glass crunched under their feet, and the sweet smell of decay was overwhelming. Sarah led the way, her flashlight beam sweeping back and forth. Behind her, she could hear Jenny's breathing becoming labored. The scratches on the young woman's arm were already starting to change color, the skin around them taking on that same gray, mottled appearance they'd seen on Dr. Peterson. "How much time do we have?" Jenny asked quietly. She'd seen the changes too. Sarah remembered the video timestamp. The subject had transformed completely within hours of infection. "I don't know. Maybe 6 hours. Maybe less." They'd made it up 2 levels when they encountered the first group of infected. 3 researchers, still wearing their ID badges, blocked the stairwell ahead. They moved with jerky, unnatural motions, but their heads turned in perfect unison when they heard the team's footsteps. "Back up," Sarah whispered. "Slowly." But it was too late. The creatures let out inhuman shrieks and charged up the stairs with impossible speed. Marcus grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall, spraying it directly into the face of the first attacker. The chemical foam slowed it down but didn't stop it. James grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her toward a side corridor. "This way. There's a service elevator." They ran through twisting hallways, the sounds of pursuit echoing behind them. Jenny was falling behind, her movements becoming sluggish as the infection spread through her system. "Leave me," she gasped, stumbling against a wall. "I can feel it happening. I can feel my thoughts changing." "We're not leaving anyone," Sarah said firmly. But even as she spoke, she could see the truth in Jenny's eyes. The bright, curious graduate student was fading, replaced by something else. Something hungry. The service elevator was just ahead, its doors standing open. But as they approached, Sarah heard the one sound that filled her with absolute terror. Jenny's voice, but wrong somehow. Deeper, more guttural. "Sarah," Jenny said from behind them. "I'm so hungry." When Sarah turned around, Jenny's eyes had gone completely white and her fingernails were already beginning to extend into claws. The transformation was happening faster than Sarah had expected. Jenny's skin was rapidly turning gray, and black veins were spreading up her neck like twisted roots. But the worst part was that she was still partially aware, still fighting against what she was becoming. "Kill me," Jenny whispered, her voice barely human now. "Please, while I'm still me. I can feel it taking over. I can feel myself wanting to hurt you." Sarah's hands shook as she backed toward the elevator. Behind Jenny, she could hear the other infected creatures getting closer, their shrieks echoing through the corridors. "I'm sorry," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, Jenny." She hit the elevator button just as Jenny lunged forward, no longer fighting the infection. Marcus slammed a heavy equipment crate between them, buying precious seconds as the elevator doors slowly closed. The last thing Sarah saw was Jenny's face, completely transformed now, pressing against the elevator doors with inhuman strength as they sealed shut. The elevator lurched upward, and for a moment there was blessed silence. But Sarah knew their nightmare was far from over. According to the building schematics, they were still 8 levels below ground, and the facility stretched for miles in every direction. "Sarah," Marcus said quietly, "look at this." He was holding a folder he'd grabbed from one of the labs marked Evacuation Protocol Surface Containment. Inside were detailed plans showing how the infection could spread if it ever reached the surface of Yellowstone. Computer models predicted total contamination of the park within 72 hours, affecting millions of visitors and wildlife. But the final page made Sarah's blood run cold. It was a government authorization dated just 3 days ago. Approval to release the Lazarus virus into the general population as a field test of reanimation technology for military applications. They did this on purpose, she realized. The outbreak wasn't an accident. Someone in the government wanted to see what would happen. As the elevator reached level B5, Sarah made a decision that would haunt her forever. She wasn't just going to escape this bunker. She was going to make sure the world knew what had been done here, even if it killed her. Sarah and Marcus never made it to the surface that day. The official report stated that Dr. Sarah Chen and her research team died in a tragic geological accident while studying seismic activity in Yellowstone National Park. Their bodies were never recovered. But here's what the government doesn't want you to know. 3 months later, park rangers began reporting strange incidents. Hikers going missing near the Norris Geyser Basin. Wildlife behaving aggressively, attacking without provocation. And late at night, when the park is closed to visitors, security cameras have captured figures moving through the wilderness with jerky, unnatural movements. The bunker was officially sealed, but the infection had already begun to spread through the underground thermal caves that connect to Yellowstone's vast geothermal system. Every geyser, every hot spring, every underground stream could be carrying the Lazarus virus further into the park's ecosystem. The most terrifying part? Dr. Chen's final transmission, found on a damaged recording device near the sealed bunker entrance, revealed something that will chill you to the bone. The bite mark on her arm wasn't from one of the infected creatures in the bunker. It was from something that had already made it to the surface weeks before her team ever found that hidden facility. The infection wasn't contained underground. It was already spreading through Yellowstone's 4 million annual visitors, carried home to cities across America by people who had no idea they'd been exposed to humanity, his deadliest mistake. Sarah's last words, barely audible on that damaged recording, were a warning that every American needs to hear. They're not just under the ground anymore. They're walking among us, and they're learning to hide what they've become. So the next time you visit a national park or any remote location where the government has a presence, ask yourself this question: what else are they hiding beneath our feet? And more importantly, what happens when those buried secrets finally claw their way to the surface? What do you think really happened to Dr. Sarah Chen and her team? Are there government bunkers hidden beneath our most beloved national parks, conducting experiments that could threaten all of humanity? Drop a comment below and let us know. Have you ever experienced anything strange or unexplainable during a visit to Yellowstone or any other national park? Your story could be the key to uncovering the truth about what's really happening in the wilderness. And if you want to hear more terrifying stories about government conspiracies, hidden bunkers, and survival horror, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We'll keep investigating the dark secrets that they don't want us to know about. What horror topics should we explore next? Government experiments, abandoned facilities, mysterious disappearances in national parks? Tell us in the comments. Your suggestion might become our next spine-chilling investigation. Remember, the truth is often stranger and more terrifying than fiction. And sometimes the only way to survive is to know what we're really up against. Stay safe out there and keep questioning everything.